If you want to really master English,
Mm.
the absolute worst thing you can do is open a dictionary.
Oh, completely. It's just a terrible
I
idea.
know that sounds, well, totally backwards, but today we're going to look at why throwing away your flashcards and watching a time-traveling pirate instead, or like an explosion in an Avengers movie, is actually proven to rewire your brain for fluency.
Yeah, it really is.
So welcome back to another custom-tailored deep dive. Today, our mission is decoding the best strategies for learning a foreign language, specifically the beautiful, chaotic language that is English.
Very chaotic.
Right. And for you, our listener, we have gathered a really cool stack of sources to help you navigate this. We're looking at an academic study on reading strategies, some standard vocabulary lists like the Oxford 3000.
Which is super helpful.
Yeah, and some genuinely weird little stories for beginners, plus a brilliant guide that uses Hollywood movies to teach the hardest parts of the language. So, okay, let's unpack this because learning a language isn't just about, blind memorization, is it?
No, not at all.
All
It
right.
fundamentally isn't. We so often treat language learning like data entry, like we can just upload a spreadsheet of words into our brains.
Right, like a computer.
Exactly. And we expect it to magically turn into fluid conversation. But language is, it's a living social tool. So to understand how to actually learn it, we have to look at how the brain processes written information.
Which is exactly what that academic study did, right? The one with the 120 language learners.
Yeah, 120 intermediate learners. The researchers wanted to test 3 distinct ways of reading to see what actually works.
I want to dig into that because, if I sit down to learn a language, my first instinct is to grab a really difficult text, open a translation app, and just grind through it word by word until my brain hurts.
Yeah, the painful method.
Exactly. I always assumed that kind of painful friction was the only way to actually learn anything.
Well, you're describing what the researchers call intensive reading.
Right.
And to be fair, it is highly effective for a very specific goal.
Okay, so it does work.
It does. They found that intensive reading, which is reading short, difficult texts really slowly to understand every single word, that was the undisputed champion for learning new vocabulary.
So it's like taking a magnifying glass to a patch of dirt.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like you're looking at every grain of dirt, every single ant. You aren't covering a lot of ground, but you know everything about that one tiny square inch.
That is a perfect visualization of what's happening in your brain. When you read intensively, you are intentionally spiking your brain's processing power. You're forcing it to stop, recognize a gap, and build a brand new connection.
But there's a catch, right?
A huge catch. Because the brain power required is so high, it's just exhausting. You can't keep it up for long. And the study showed that while this group learned the most new words, they didn't really become better, smoother readers.
Which brings us to the second group. So if intensive reading is the magnifying glass, the extensive reading group took a totally different approach. They read large amounts of easier material. They weren't stopping to look up words. They were just reading for the story, for fun.
And the data show that this extensive group saw the biggest improvements in overall fluency.
But wait, I have to challenge that a bit.
Okay.
Because if I'm a listener right now, and I feel guilty because I just read, easy English comic books, and I skip the words I don't know, isn't that just being lazy?
It feels lazy, yeah.
Right. How am I learning if I'm just ignoring what I don't know?
Well, it feels lazy because school taught us that learning has to hurt. But neurologically, extensive reading relies on pattern recognition. You aren't building exhausting new pathways for unknown words. You are greasing the wheels of the pathways that already exist.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you're training your brain to process the language smoothly without getting stuck on every little thing.
So to stick with my analogy, extensive reading is like taking a scenic road trip across the country.
Yes, exactly.
I might not know the exact type of tree I'm driving past because I put the magnifying glass away, but I understand the whole landscape. I'm building momentum.
And momentum is what creates fluency. If intensive reading builds the bricks, the vocabulary, then extensive reading builds the actual house.
But the study found a problem if you only do those two things.
Right, which is why they had a third group, the interactive reading group.
And this is where the data gets really cool. These learners read texts and then they actively discuss them with other people.
They debated them, they collaborated.
Yeah, and they showed the highest levels of motivation out of everyone.
Because language is inherently social. When you just read alone in your room, the stakes are super low.
Yeah.
But the moment you have to talk about that text with another human being,
Your brain wakes up.
exactly,
Yeah.
your brain tags the information with a high priority alert. Social survival is on the line.
Yeah.
You have to negotiate meaning and adapt how you speak in real time.
You can't just pause a real conversation and pull out a dictionary.
No, you definitely can't.
You just have to use whatever tools you have to survive the chat. So the science tells us a blended approach is absolutely necessary. You need the magnifying glass to gather bricks, you need the road trip to build the house, and you need someone in the passenger seat to argue with about the directions.
That is the complete blueprint right there,
Okay, so if we know how to read, the next question for you listening is what to read.
which is crucial.
Right, because if I am going to sit down with my magnifying glass and tire my brain out, I want to be sure I'm looking at the right words. I don't want to waste energy memorizing the English word for, like, the plastic tip of a shoelace.
An egglet.
Yeah, an aglet. I don't need to know that if I don't even know how to ask for directions yet.
This is where statistical frequency becomes your best friend. In our sources, we have the Oxford 3000. It's a list of the 3,000 most frequently used words in English.
And looking at the list, it's filled with those really foundational words. Words like audience or available, avoid, attend.
The goal here is efficiency. Statistically, if you master those 3,000 core words, you can understand about 90% of everyday English conversations.
90%. That's huge.
It completely removes the guesswork. You don't have to wonder if a word is worth learning. If it's on the list, you need it.
I see the logic, but there's a pretty glaring problem here.
What's that?
Reading a dictionary, even a perfect one, is just agonizing.
Oh, it's the worst.
Right, it has no human context. Nobody sits down on a Sunday morning with their coffee to read a list of words like balance, barbecue, battery.
True. And the brain doesn't retain isolated data points very well anyway.
Yeah.
It craves a structure to hang those words on. Without a story or emotion, the words just slip out of your memory.
And that brings us to the most entertaining source we have today, the beginner short stories.
These are fantastic.
They are wild. They take these dry, common words from the Oxford 3000 and throw them into the most bizarre situations.
It's actually a very calculated technique. The learner isn't just staring at the word receptionist or lift, which is British for elevator, by the way.
Right. They meet those words in a story about an office worker named Laura. And you learn words like incident, quiet, and invisible because Laura is dealing with some sort of glowing, invisible metal ball that rolls into her office.
Which is totally absurd.
It is. Suddenly, receptionist isn't just a flashcard. It's a character having a really confusing Tuesday.
And then there's this story about Frank.
Oh, Frank the Pirate. I love Frank.
So the text uses a pirate named Frank to teach action verbs. He tells another pirate to steal a watch and travel through time to the 17th century.
To fight the English. The absurdity is why it works, isn't it?
Exactly. It uses something called episodic memory. Think about the words in that story. Grab, activate, angry, destroy. If you just see destroy on a list, your brain ignores it.
Yeah, it's boring.
But when you see destroy, because Frank the Pirate is trying to use the stolen time machine, your brain attaches the word to a vivid, moving image. You're recording an event, not a definition.
It also teaches idioms in a way that makes sense. The source mentions the phrase, be taken aback, which means to be unpleasantly surprised.
Right?
If you read that on a page, you might think it means physically stepping backward, but in the story, a character walks into their house, sees a weird creature on the sofa, and is taken aback. You feel the surprise before you even translate the words.
That emotional weight acts like an anchor for your memory.
Which is the perfect setup for the biggest hurdle for English learners. Because once you have that basic vocabulary, once you've done the time-traveling pirate stories, you hit a wall.
The ultimate boss level.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. Phrasal verbs.
The absolute nightmare of the English language.
Two little words that mean something totally different when you push them together. But our source material is a guide that teaches these tricky verbs exclusively through Hollywood blockbusters.
It's genius, really. It's the ultimate visual learning tool. It perfectly simulates that interactive emotional context we were talking about.
Yeah, I was looking at the guide, and the Captain America example blew my mind. The phrase is carry out.
Okay, let's break that down.
So if I'm a learner, carry means to hold an object, and out means to leave a room. But together, carry out means to perform an operation.
And how do they anchor that for you?
With a quote from Samuel L. Jackson. He's in this tense military meeting, yelling about someone who ignored an order and carried out an unauthorized operation.
See, you aren't just reading a definition. You're visualizing this high-stakes dramatic scene. The tension in the room locks the phrase into your brain.
Here's another one from Avengers, Age of Ultron. The phrases are come apart or fall apart, meaning to collapse.
A great visual line.
Exactly. The movie shows a shell hitting a building, blowing a hole in the floor, and the whole place starts coming apart. You literally see the concrete crumbling in your mind.
The physical action on the screen proves what the word means instantly.
But wait, I do have to push back here,
Go ahead.
because I feel like this could backfire. Let's look at the movie V for Vendetta. The phrase is take off. The quote is take off your mask, meaning remove it.
Right.
But we also know take off means an airplane leaving the ground. So if I'm learning this, how do I not just give up? Take means grab, off means away. How does that mean both a plane flying and removing a mask?
It's so frustrating, I know.
Isn't it dangerous to skip the literal translation?
Well, that frustration is exactly why literal translation fails for phrasal verbs. The logic just isn't there. If you try to decode take off word by word, you hit a dead end.
So what do you do?
This is the brilliance of the movie method. It bypasses the language logic center of your brain entirely and hits the motor cortex.
What does that mean?
When you watch that dramatic moment where a character physically grabs a mask and removes it, your brain links the sound of takeoff directly to the physical action of removal. Yeah, you skip the middleman. You don't translate English to your native language to the concept. You just go straight from the sound to the physical action.
So you build a direct pathway, just like a native speaker. Because a native speaker doesn't think take plus off equals remove. They just picture the action.
Precisely. Let's look at The Dark Knight Rises. The phrase is set up, meaning to start a business. The quote is about Wayne Enterprises setting up 14 different companies.
You just picture Bruce Wayne in a boardroom. The visual overrides the confusing word.
Exactly. Or in The Hangover Part 2, the phrase is see off, which means going to the airport to say goodbye to someone.
Which is such a weird phrase if you think about it literally. I am seeing you off, like I am observing you leave.
Right. But seeing that awkward, funny moment at the airport in the movie locks the real meaning in your head. It shows why English relies so much on phrasal verbs. They convey a specific physical direction that one single word just can't capture.
Okay, so we have the reading strategy, we have the 3,000 common words, we have the bizarre short stories, and we have Hollywood explosions for our phrasal verbs.
A lot of good tools.
We have a massive pile of really good bricks. But there's one final piece of the puzzle. The glue that holds the house together.
Grammar.
Yeah. Specifically, how English forces you to navigate time.
The final source dives into a grammar rule that trips up almost everyone, even advanced learners. The difference between the past simple and the present perfect.
Which shifts us from just learning words to understanding structure.
Right. The source breaks it down so simply. Past simple, like I did it, is used for actions that are totally isolated in the past. The action is over. The time is closed.
So if we visualize it, past simple is like a closed book on a shelf. It's done, it's dusty, it's in the past. You read it and you put it away.
That's perfect. But the present perfect I have done it works completely differently. It means the action happened in the past, but the result of that action is impacting right now.
The time isn't closed.
Exactly.
So if past simple is a closed book on a shelf, present perfect is like an open tab on your internet browser.
Oh, I like that.
You clicked the link an hour ago in the past, but the page is still open, and it's actively eating up your computer's memory right now.
That is a phenomenal analogy. You open the tab in the past, but the consequence is present. And the source gives us specific marker words to help you spot this open tab, words like already, just, and yet.
Because they signal that something happened recently and changed your current reality.
Right. The example they give is, I don't want to go to the cafe, I've just eaten.
Let's break that down. Why not just say, I ate?
Because the speaker is using present perfect to explain their current state. I have eaten is the past action, but the result is present. The person is currently full, and therefore they don't want to go to the cafe.
The grammar is doing the heavy lifting of explaining why.
Exactly.
Because if you say, I didn't want to go to the cafe, I ate, it feels kind of clunky, but I've just eaten connects the past meal to the present lack of hunger. It's cause and effect.
It's the connective tissue of English. Once you stop viewing grammar as just arbitrary rules meant to torture you and start viewing it as a tool to explain cause and effect, It becomes way less scary.
So, what does this all mean for you listening? If we look at the journey we took today, it's clear that language learning isn't just blind memorization.
Far from it.
It's a mix of different strategies. We started with the academic blueprint, using intensive reading to gather bricks, extensive reading to build the house, and interactive reading to lock it in.
Then we applied that to the Oxford 3000 to get the most useful words. But we brought them to life with stories about time-traveling pirates to give them emotional weight.
And we supercharged that vocabulary with Hollywood movies to conquer phrasal verbs, using visual context to skip literal translation.
And finally, we glued it all together with the grammar of time. The closed book of the past simple versus the open browser tab of the present perfect.
It's a really comprehensive way to rewire how your brain processes English. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final thought from these sources that I think is really worth thinking about.
Yeah, specifically regarding those Hollywood phrasal verbs.
Oh, I love a good underlying theory. Let's hear it.
Well, language is ultimately a reflection of a culture's mindset, right?
Right.
If you look at how heavily English relies on these dynamic, motion-based phrasal verbs, words like break in, fall down, take off, turn into, everything is expressed through physical movement.
Oh, wow.
So it begs the question, what does that say about how native English speakers view the world?
Hmm.
It suggests a worldview that is deeply action-oriented,
Hmm.
constantly focused on trajectory and change, rather than just static states of being.
That is fascinating. So learning English isn't just learning new sounds for the words you already know. It's adopting a whole new mindset where the world is constantly in motion. Every phrasal verb is like a little cultural fingerprint.
Hmm.
And that circles right back to where we started. You aren't just opening a dictionary. You are learning how to navigate a constantly moving world. The rules might seem chaotic, and the grammar might feel like an open browser tab eating up all your mental RAM.
It really does sometimes.
But once you figure out how to navigate the landscape, the places you can go are limitless.
A cognitive Wild West, but one that you can definitely tame.
Think about that the next time you hear a phrasal verb in a movie. Is it just an annoying rule, or is it a window into how an entire culture sees reality? Keep that open browser tab in your mind and keep exploring.